I had a feeling Ross Cullum wasn't going to walk away from Port Charles with a happy ending. That's just not how this town works. I've watched General Hospital long enough to know that when a villain starts getting more screen time, the clock is already ticking. Still, I have to admit, hearing Andrew Hawks look back on his final days as Cullum made me appreciate the role even more. Sometimes it's easy to focus only on the story on the screen, but every now and then I like hearing what an actor carries with him after the cameras stop rolling. Around here, we'd say, that's the way the cookie crumbles, but that doesn't mean the journey wasn't worth taking. What really caught my attention was how this role turned into something much bigger than anyone expected. I couldn't help but smile when I learned that Hawks originally thought he was only coming in for 3 episodes. Then it became 6 or 8, and before he knew it, he had appeared in around 40 episodes. That tells me something important. It tells me the writers saw value in keeping Cullum around, and it tells me Hawks brought something special every time he stepped in front of the camera. I've seen plenty of soap villains come and go over the years, but the ones who last longer than planned usually earn that time through hard work, not luck. Of course, Hawks admitted he always knew Cullum's exit was inevitable, and honestly, I never expected anything different. General Hospital has always had a way of making sure its villains eventually answer for what they've done. Whether it's a prison cell or something much worse, justice usually catches up in Port Charles. Even so, knowing the ending is coming doesn't make saying goodbye any easier. I could hear a real sense of gratitude in the way Hawks spoke about his experience, and I found that refreshing. In today's world, people often rush to the next job, but he took the time to appreciate the people who helped make this chapter memorable. The more I thought about it, the more I respected the way he described working alongside the cast and crew. He didn't sound like someone checking off another television credit. He sounded like a man who genuinely enjoyed being part of a team. That reminds me of the old American saying, many hands make light work. A long-running show like General Hospital doesn't survive for decades because of one actor or one storyline. It survives because hundreds of people show up every day, do their jobs with pride, and trust one another to create something audiences keep coming back to. One comment from Hawks stayed with me more than anything else. He said he approached every script as though he were performing Shakespeare. Now, I know some folks might chuckle at hearing a soap opera mentioned in the same breath as Shakespeare, but I actually understand what he meant. It's not about comparing the stories, it's about respecting the craft. If an actor believes every scene deserves his full effort, that attitude eventually shows on screen. I think viewers can tell when someone is simply reading lines and when someone truly believes in the character they're playing, and then there's that final episode. I'll tell you, hearing that it involves stunt work, location filming, a helicopter, and even John Oliver made me grin. That's not exactly an ordinary farewell for a daytime soap villain. It sounds like the production team wanted Cullum to leave with energy instead of quietly fading into the background. I always enjoy when General Hospital reaches beyond its usual studio setting and gives us something that feels bigger. Those moments remind me that daytime television can still surprise us when it wants to. The biggest thing I walked away with wasn't sadness over Cullum's exit, it was respect for Andrew Hawks himself. He understood his character's fate from the beginning, accepted it with grace, and still gave every episode everything he had. To me, that's the mark of a true professional. Even if Cullum's story has reached its final page, I have a feeling this won't be the last time many of us remember the impact Hawks made during his unexpected run in Port Charles. The more I thought about Andrew Hawks talking about his last day on the set, the more I realized how different real life can be from what we imagine. I think most of us picture an actor finishing a role with plenty of time to soak everything in. Maybe everyone gathers around, someone gives a heartfelt speech, there are hugs, a few tears, and one last walk through the studio. But that's not how it happened for Hawks at all. His final day sounded like a freight train that never slowed down. One minute he was filming action sequences, the next he was shooting on location, then climbing around a helicopter, and somewhere in the middle of all that excitement, John Oliver showed up. I actually laughed when I pictured how chaotic that day must have been. Around here, we'd say, boy, they sure didn't let any grass grow under his feet. To be honest, I think there's something fitting about that kind of goodbye. Ross Cullum was never the kind of character who quietly slipped into the background. From the moment he became part of the story, there was always tension following him. Every appearance carried the feeling that something dangerous was about to happen. So in a strange way, it feels right that his last day wasn't calm or sentimental. It was loud, fast, unpredictable, and packed with energy. That's exactly the kind of ending I'd expect for someone like Cullum. What impressed me even more was that despite all the pressure of filming, Hawks never lost sight of the people standing beside him. He spoke warmly about Ryan Pavey, and I found myself thinking about how much work goes into making those intense scenes believable. People watching from home usually see 5 or 6 minutes of television and never realize how many hours of preparation happened beforehand. Hawks mentioned that he and Ryan rehearsed together before nearly every scene. That tells me they weren't relying on talent alone. They respected each other enough to keep sharpening every performance until it felt right. I've always believed that chemistry between actors isn't something you can fake forever. Sure, good actors can fool us for a while, but lasting chemistry usually grows from trust. When two performers know each other's timing, understand each other's strengths, and genuinely want the other person to succeed, something special happens on screen. Watching those scenes now, I'll probably notice little details I overlooked before because I'll know how much effort they invested behind the scenes. That's the kind of craftsmanship I admire more as I've gotten older. Something else really stood out to me. Hawks didn't spend his interview talking about how difficult his own role was or listing his accomplishments. Instead, he kept shining the spotlight on everyone around him. I appreciate people who do that because it shows confidence instead of ego. He praised Carlo Rhoda, Kelly Thiebaud, Chris McKenna, and then immediately turned his attention to the younger actors like Asher Antonizin, Bluesy Burke, and Finn Carr. That says a lot about the kind of person he is. I always enjoy seeing experienced performers encourage younger cast members. Television is a funny business. One generation eventually hands the stories over to the next, and if the veterans aren't willing to help those younger actors grow, the whole show eventually loses something valuable. General Hospital has survived for generations because that tradition keeps repeating itself. New faces arrive, familiar faces guide them, and before long, those newcomers become veterans themselves. It's almost like watching a family business where everyone learns from the people who came before them. Listening to Hawks describe the cast made me think that the atmosphere behind the cameras is probably healthier than many people realize. Fans sometimes get caught up in fictional rivalries and dramatic storylines, but backstage it sounds like people genuinely enjoy working together. I think viewers can actually feel that without realizing it. A cast that respects one another usually creates stronger performances because everyone is pulling in the same direction. As the old saying goes, a rising tide lifts all boats. That phrase kept coming back to me while I listened to Hawks reflect on his experience. Another moment that really stayed with me had nothing to do with explosions or helicopters. It was hearing him talk about appearing on Maurice Benard's State of Mind. I've watched enough interviews over the years to know that Maurice has created a place where people can put down the Hollywood mask and simply be honest. Hawks spoke about that experience with genuine warmth, and I don't think he was just being polite. So while Ross Cullum's chapter may have reached its final page, I don't feel like this is really goodbye to Andrew Hawks. If anything, I think this experience proved exactly what kind of performer he is. He walked into General Hospital expecting a handful of episodes, stayed far longer than anyone planned, earned the respect of his fellow actors, won over a devoted audience, and left with genuine gratitude instead of bitterness. To me, that's a success story no matter how a character's journey ends. And if one day I tune in and see Andrew Hawks back in Port Charles wearing a different face or somehow stepping back into Cullum's shoes, don't be surprised if the first thing I do is smile and think, well, that's General Hospital for you. You just never know what's waiting around the next corner.